Well, good morning, everybody. It's so good to be up front here. I'm thankful to Sutton for allowing me to speak once again, finally, and it's just a special welcome to the folks that are outside on this beautiful day and those watching online. You know, the month of July has been great. I didn't speak at all, but we had so many wonderful speakers in our congregation. Rick and we had Jimmy, and then we had Mark, and we had Matthew, and we're just really blessed to have so many people that are gifted teachers and speakers, and then there's me. So you're going to be stuck with me for quite a few weeks now, so buckle up. But as we wrapped up last week, this Sermon on the Mount, which only took us like 5 months to cover one little sermon, right? I thought it would be important to look at what happened next. Like, what happened after that time on the mountain? Because tens or hundreds or maybe even thousands of people were gathered together sitting at the feet of Jesus, and they were just moved as he explained to them what the kingdom of God was like and is like, and he invited them to come and be a part of that. And he invites us to do the same. But eventually, they had to come down off the mountain to live in the valley. And so that's what we're going to take a look at for the next 3 weeks. Now, have you guys ever had what someone might call a mountaintop experience with Jesus? I've had a few of those, and they're really incredible. But I think of the walk to Emmaus, which was probably my first mountaintop experience. I think of Young Life Camp, if some of you guys have been to that. It's these opportunities that we have where we can get away from home, get away from the busyness of your schedule, just the daily routine, and really just spend some time getting to know Jesus and some other people. And my experience has been that those are incredible times. They're transformative times. But at the end, guess what? You got to return to the valley. You got to return to the valley. And it can be difficult coming off the mountain back to the valley. But you've got to return. And you've got to return to those routines. You got to return to some of the strife and the call to perform, right? You have to return to oftentimes an environment where people don't love and aren't as passionate for Jesus as you are, where there's actually persecution and opposition. You have to return in the midst of divisiveness and dissent, disease, and death. Like, that's what's going on in the valley. And that's what we're called to do. We can't stay on the mountain. We got to return to the valley where we live. But as difficult as that may be, we don't have to return alone. See, Jesus wants to come with us. And he says, I'll come with you. If you're one of my followers, I'll be with you. Like, I'm never going to leave you. I'm never going to forsake you. Bring me with you as you go and you live in the valleys. Now, over the next 3 weeks, we're going to look at 3 different encounters that Jesus had with 3 very different people. The first one we're going to look at is found in Matthew chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. So if you have a Bible, I would encourage you to turn there. If you're inside and you have a church Bible, page 962, if you want to follow along. I always find it's helpful to me to look at the written word as it's being read, or you can always look at it on the screens behind me. So here we go. It said, when Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus reached out his hand and he touched the man. I am willing, he said. Be clean, be clean. And immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, see that you don't tell anyone. But go, show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I can read a passage like this, it's really this profound encounter that a man with leprosy had with Jesus, and I just kind of read it and don't really pause to take it in. 4 short verses are trying to encapsulate all that took place. So I find I'm more of a visual learner. I don't know about you guys, but like when I see something, I get it. And so I thought it might be nice to look at a clip from The Chosen where Jesus has this encounter with a man with leprosy. So here it is.
It's a beautiful day or anything, huh? Come on. Huh?
It's a leper. Stay back. Cover your mouth. Don't breathe his air. Don't come any closer.
It's okay, John. It's okay. Rabbi, you cannot.
His disease, you...
Please. Please. Please don't turn away from me. I won't. Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Only if you want to, I submit to you. My sister, she was a servant at the wedding. She told me what you can do. I know you can heal me if you are willing. I am willing. Be cleansed. Thank you. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. What can I ever do? No. Do not say anything to anyone. You don't seek your own honor? Please just do me this one thing. But what do I tell people? Go. Show yourself to the priest. Let them inspect you and see that you are cleansed. Make the proper offering in the temple as Moses commanded. And go on your way. Who has an extra tunic? Just one of you, just one of you. That's enough.
Isn't that helpful to see it? Now you feel like you were there, like you get it, right? Unlike just me reading it to you. And you probably not remember a single thing that I say this morning, but you'll remember that. You'll remember that. And so that's the beauty of things like The Chosen. Now, here's what I hope that you picked up on. Did you sense the despair in that leper? In that man, he was desperate, wasn't he? He was desperate for healing. See, he had this awful, disfiguring and debilitating disease that would ultimately lead to his death at some point in time. There was no cure. He couldn't go to the doctor and get some medicine. There was nothing like that out there, and he was desperate for healing. But he was also desperate for restoration. He was desperate for restoration because he had been exiled. He had gone to the priest, and the priest would have exiled him from the synagogue, which is the Jewish church, would have exiled him from his home, from his family, from the village. He was an outcast. He was unclean, unclean. And so hopefully you got a sense of that. And did you notice kind of the reaction of the people? How about in the beginning when the woman just screams at the sight of him? Can you imagine being a leper? And that's how people react. They see you coming from afar and they just scream with fright. It was as if she had seen a zombie, right? Like this dead person coming towards her. And in essence, that is who he was. By all accounts, he was alive, but yet he was dead. He was dead to them. He was dead to society. He couldn't live amongst the people. He even had to keep a distance of 200 to 300 feet away from anybody because he was diseased. He was unclean. And then did you notice John? So that was John, and he pulled out the knife, and he was ready to kill this man if he got any closer. Imagine that. Imagine that people would kill you just because you're different, because you're unclean or diseased. Now, the scream of the woman and John pulling the knife, that's not found in the Bible, but I think it's a reasonable response to what would have taken place, right? And so we see how men and women responded naturally there, but how did Jesus respond? Because this we do see here. It's laid out here. And a couple things that we see about Jesus. First, instead of turning away from this leper, Jesus drew near to him. Instead of turning away from him, he turned to him. He drew near to him. And the other thing we see is that instead of withdrawing his hand, he reached out and he touched the man. He touched the man and brought healing to the man. That's who Jesus is. We also see that he was demonstrating his authority. He was demonstrating his authority. So if you were here last week as we wrapped up the Sermon on the Mount, you may recall the last two verses. So in Matthew 7, verses 28 and 29, this is what it said. It said, when Jesus had finished saying these things, so that's the sermon, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. They were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. See, Jesus had just gotten done demonstrating his authority through the words that he had spoken as he explained about his kingdom and what it was like to be one of his followers. And then it was time to come down off the mountain into the valley. And now what we see is he is demonstrating his authority by his words, right? He just spoke two words to this man who was diseased. He said, be clean. Be clean. He was demonstrating his authority through his words and through his actions, right? He bent down. He laid hands on him. He drew near to him. It's all about Jesus' authority. Now, I also love that reaction, at the end. So the man's cleansed. And I mean, can you imagine that? Like if you were there and you were witnessing this, you're one of his disciples, and all of a sudden, this guy is like new. And they were just dumbfounded, right? They're just standing there with their mouths open like, and I love how he's like, anybody got some clean clothes for the guy? And they're just like, and then they all start scrambling, right? I kind of feel like that would be me. I'd be like, oh yeah. Maybe think, as you look forward, you see that kind of reaction, and I'm kind of dumbfounded by Jesus' response to the leper. Did you pay attention to what he said to the leper after he healed him, or I should say the former leper? Listen at verse 4 again. It's interesting. Jesus said to him, see that you don't tell anyone. See that you don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone what I just did for you. That seems a little odd, doesn't it? And then he goes on and he says, but go and basically tell someone, show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them, as a testimony to them. So first, Jesus tells him, he's like, don't go tell anybody. Don't tell anybody what just happened here. What do you think he did? He went and told everybody, right? Because that's what we do. Like, you experience something incredible, you're not keeping your mouth shut. Like, you're telling everybody that'll listen. But I think the reason Jesus was telling them, don't go tell anybody, because he didn't want crowds to follow him just to be like a circus act, where he's a performer and they're just gathering around because they want to see the next trick that he's going to perform. That's not what Jesus was about. And in that scene, they said, you're not about your own honor, and he wasn't. Look, he was calling people to follow him, to be his disciples, to live and love and lead like him, to be willing to give up everything for that purpose. He wasn't looking just for a bunch of people to circle around. And so I think that's one of the reasons he told them not to go and tell anybody. Secondly, he did say, go to the priests. Go show yourself to the priest. So this would have been the man who would have sent him out of the synagogue, out of his home, out of his family, out of his village to be exiled. He said, go show yourself to the priest and do what? And bring the gift that Moses commanded. So if you had leprosy and you were healed, God had given a command. And he said, what you're supposed to do is bring 2 birds to the priest. And one would be sacrificed, and the other one would be released and set free. And I think maybe a couple of reasons why Jesus did that. Again, back to authority. I think he was honoring the authority of the priest and honoring the authority of God's word and his commands. I believe he was honoring the priest and honoring God's commands. Remember what Jesus said as we were going through the Sermon on the Mount? He said, I've not come to abolish the law. I came to fulfill it. I came to fulfill it. And so I believe that he's sending them to the priests as a testimony. So that's what it said at the end. As a testimony to the fact that he is God in the flesh. That he is the one who has fulfilled all the law and the prophets. I believe that's one of the reasons. And then finally, this was the method for this man to be restored. This was the method for this man to be restored. Again, to his home, to his family, and to his worshiping community, his faith community. He had to go through this process to be restored. Excuse me. God has always been in the restoration business. He's always been in the restoration business. From the very beginning of time as we know it, he has been about reconciling men and women to himself, to this intimate, life-giving relationship with him, and reconciling us to one another. He's in the restoration business. And so that's what we see being demonstrated here with Jesus and the man formerly known as the leper. And so I've had some time to reflect over this, and I think each and every one of us can identify with the leper. I think we are all like the leper, and it's my hope that we can also identify with Jesus, that we can all be like Jesus. So here's what I'm thinking. First, how are we like the leper? How are we like the leper? Well, the first thing is we all recognize that we are unclean. We all recognize that we are unclean. What I mean by that is this. We all know that we're not perfect, right? We've all messed up. Every single one of us has messed up. We've fallen short of the mark. Paul said, we've all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Everybody on board with that? Everybody? If you're not, you're like, no, I'm perfect. Then look next to you, and they will set you straight. But so I think we can relate to the leper, right? Like we're all, quote unquote, unclean, right? So I think we have that in common. And we all know, if we're being honest with ourselves, that we have a way of trying to cover up our inadequacies, our infirmities, if you will, our insecurities with possessions or popularity, power. But we also know that we are very susceptible to being found out, that those things can quickly be removed and we are exposed as the hurting, broken people that we are. I think we're all aware of that if we'll just be honest with ourselves. I think we can identify with the leper. Now, another way that I think we're like the leper is we've all felt alone and isolated, and maybe you've even felt like an outcast. Maybe you've even felt like an outcast. Think back just to the way we responded to COVID, right? We withdrew from community. We withdrew from people. We even created rules and kind of like laws, right? That we had to keep our distance. See, a leper had to stay, again, 200 to 300 feet away. Well, we just made it 6 feet. But you kind of had to stay away because we're all unclean. Unclean. So I think we can identify with a leper just based on our experience during COVID. And we know the pain of that kind of isolation. So that's another reason. Another way that I think we can be like the leper is we're all in need of healing. We're all in need of healing. Some of us are in need of physical healing. But this is what I do know. We're all in need of emotional and spiritual healing. We're all in need of emotional and spiritual healing. And then finally, one of the other ways that we identify, we can relate to, we're like the leper, is we know that we need healing. We know that we need healing, and we're looking for that kind of healing in various things or various people. Our pride tells us that we can heal ourselves. Our pride tells us that we can heal ourselves, but time reveals to us that we can't. And eventually, hopefully sooner versus later, we will be brought to our knees right before Jesus and discover that he is the only one that can bring the healing that we so desperately need. We're all like the leper. Now, my hope is that we can all be like Jesus. Like there's an opportunity for us to relate to Jesus as well. We can be like Jesus. The first way is that we can commit to following him and that we can become his disciple. His disciple, someone who lives and loves and leads like him. And that's the first way that we become like Jesus. Secondly, what we do is we can begin to see with his eyes the hurting people around us. We can ask him to help us see as he sees people around us, those who maybe have been deemed by society as unclean, as less than, as maybe even the outcasts of society, that we might begin to see them as he sees them. And that as a response, we can become more like Jesus. Instead of turning our backs on them or withdrawing from them, we would approach them. We would draw near to them. We would even reach out our hand and touch them in a loving, hopeful, healing way. We can be like Jesus. Another thing we can do when we're interacting with folks is we can just look to bless them, to bless them. Remember the acronym? Some of you guys that have been around, you should know this. So bless, B-L-E-S-S. So the B, begin with prayer. So begin by praying for these people that you encounter, the unclean people in your life. And guess who they are? They're everyone, right? Because we're all unclean. So begin to pray for those folks that are near you. Then L, listen. Listen with care. That means care to listen. Listen to their story. Listen to what's going on in their life. Look and listen. E, eat together. Eating together is a great way to really create community. Eat together. The first S is serve. Serve them, and ideally, you come to a point where you serve together because that really creates some incredible bonds. And then the final S is share your story and God's story with them. When the appropriate time presents itself, be ready. Share the hope that you have in Jesus and share Jesus' story with them. Because the most important thing you can do in life is introduce other people to Jesus, the one who can restore them. Now, Taking it a step further, especially in light of the leper's life, another thing we can do is we can invite them into community. We can invite them to our homes. We can invite them to church. Not just say, hey, why don't you come to our church? We invite them to come with us to church, because coming to church is really one of the most intimidating things that anybody does on their own, and it's a lot easier when somebody brings you, meets you out in the parking lot, or comes with you into the church, all right? Everybody experience going to church? If you're on vacation, most of us are wrapping up, just go to a strange church that you've never been to. It's uncomfortable, right? So invite them to come with you to church. Invite them to join you in a life group or a small group. Help develop community. So remember, Jesus was and is in the restoration business. He was and is in the restoration business, and we should be too. We should be too. The first thing we need is to experience that type of restoration ourselves. So if you've never experienced it, it's difficult to help others experience it. It's like, how do you explain to somebody how incredible it is to have this personal, intimate relationship with Jesus if they've never experienced it? It's really one of the most difficult things I know of to explain. It's like, at least for myself, life was kind of one-dimensional, black and white. And then when I had this encounter with Jesus and began to follow him, all of a sudden it was like everything was in 3D and vivid color, right? All of a sudden my eyes were open. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I began to see God for who he truly is, this loving God who had chosen me, cared for me, had a purpose and a plan for me. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I never knew him. And then I look around and I begin to understand who I am and who you are, who he created us to be, that we were created with a far greater purpose than what most of us settle for. And then I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And he places his spirit within you, and you have that peace knowing whether you're on the mountain or you're down in the valley, that God is always with you, and it is just amazing. And so first, we've got to experience that kind of restoration in our own lives. And then, secondly, we need to be open to God using us to bring restoration to somebody else's life. Bringing restoration to somebody else's life. I don't know if you've experienced this, but one of the greatest joys I've ever experienced, if not the greatest, is seeing God use me in a small way to help bring somebody into that restoring relationship with Jesus. There's nothing like it. I'm a dad, and I've been present at the birth of a child, which is incredible. It's a joyous time. But it is not as great as seeing that child being reborn through faith in Jesus Christ. There's nothing like it. It is the most amazing, important thing in all the world. It's one thing, awesome thing, to witness the birth of a child. It's an even greater thing to witness the rebirth of a child when they come to faith and they begin to follow after Jesus. The lights go on. There is no greater joy. And that's the kind of joy that Jesus invites us into. He's about restoration, so should we. Now, while mountaintop experiences are great, and I want to encourage you to seek those opportunities as often as possible, because we need that. They are transformative. They are life-giving. We need to get away, from the stress of this life and kind of go up on a mountain and just hang out with Jesus and some other people that are doing the same. We got to live in the valley, right? We have to come down eventually and live in the valley. But remember again, he comes with us. He comes with us. Now, if you've never experienced what I'm talking about, if it all just sounds kind of like craziness, I want to invite you in a second just to come up and to bow your knee maybe at these rails here. Just like Jesus encountered that leper and he came forward and he fell to his knees. He believed that Jesus could heal him. I want you to come with that same kind of belief and encounter Jesus. Just ask Jesus, Jesus, I want to know you like that. I want to know you like that. And I believe he'll meet you there. We'll have prayer ministers here and outside that would be happy to pray with you. You can come with a friend or family member maybe and pray on your own, or come by yourself. It doesn't really matter. We also have an amazing prayer ministry and healing prayer ministry here at the church that I would encourage you to look into. We all need it. It's not just for people that are really struggling. Every one of us is broken, all right? We all are unclean, and we all need that kind of prayer. It's an amazing, free gift to you. You got to take advantage of it. If you're interested in learning more, contact Sue Vinson, and so here's her number, 540-521-0524, or you can email her at sue.vinson@gmail.com. So that's how you get connected. If you haven't experienced that restoration, come. And for those of you who have, I want to challenge you. I want to really encourage you to be about the restoration business, just like Jesus is about the restoration business, and ask him to open your eyes to see the people around you that you live, learn, work, and play with, and to look for opportunities to serve them, to bless them, to introduce them to Jesus, the one who can and will heal them. Let's pray. Dear God, thanks so much for this day. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to open up your word. And I thank you for the Chosen and some of those videos that really help us engage with your word, and it makes it even more memorable, and we get a little bit more of the fullness of what's taking place there. Lord, I pray that those images and your words would be forever etched on our hearts and our minds, and that we would recognize that you are in the restoration business. I do pray that you would, one, restore each and every one of us, and two, use us to help restore others. Thank you, Lord, for the hope that we have in you. And we pray all this in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.